having an understanding of material UI and React in the sense that we're striving to customize and stream as well as express and expose variables that are embedded in some stream of batch asynchronous data running through Zookeeper and an HA proxy, quite and extensively used with Mesos when discussing framework scheduling. It is interesting to note that the linear ideal of presenting data in line with a variable that's injected into an equation, into a div rendered through the DOM, must be stacked instead of queued. In other words, it should come in a last in, first out. Now, this is only because we're monitoring. We're listening to the heartbeat. And that's how we can find out the peaks and the troughs of interest. And MapReduce is a subject covered in Lecture 1. You're more than welcome to review it. For brevity, let me point out that what we're seeking to do here is to create a card instance object. Card is an element of Material UI that displays a card paper with fixed width, allowing you to style the content of the card. The content of the card can be a button. And because of the restriction to have a fixed width, we can play around with instances of height and partitions of the grid that we're aiming to develop here. Now, just as a reminder, the render function will give us an instance of a UI element. You can consider this box the main grid. This main grid is a root DOM object with its own styling called at this level. This has a get subtitle for the Material UI property that gives this object a name and also a color. We do a props children check, and we always export in order to make this function available to all the other classes. Now remember, we're propagating a state using super agent and our cluster store configs. We propagate Mesos batches. This is the asynchronous data we speak of. We set an interval that acts as a Lamport clock or a latch. The state contains also an array of nodes, framework, tasks, and a leader instance. Now, if you look at your left side, you'll notice that the mosaic box and the mosaic table are distinct classes in distinct folders under components. These are rendered independently, and they are also styled independently. It is styled and usually handled using the enter-exit mechanism established by Material and D3JS. D3 JS is a data-driven visualization library, which is very similar to jQuery, and it is particularly interesting when it comes to writing declarative web applications. Now, the state and the metrics callback gives you an idea of the broadcasted JSON message and the source, which is the metrics snapshot URL available with any Mesos instance that can be exposed on the REPL or the terminal. The Mesos Flux propagator on your left-hand side is the Flux action derived from the component it is instantiated from, and provides you with a key value mapping. A key value mapping is exactly what we're aiming to replicate, and every element inside a component must have a styling legend, ideally. This is abiding to the declarative enter-exit mechanism established by D3JS and Material UI using the React routing procedure, whereby the key and the value collection in this case is in some ways fiber Latin, having strata of information and properties embedded in those objects that can only be accessed if you query for that attribute, and it's all in a JSON simplified manner. Now we're able to complete our app.js that will be routed via the Node.js server running Zookeeper and Express. Remember, in this case, inject tap event plugin is a dispatch callback for an eventful or a stateful action or a method considered, in this case, a meta element with content and body. The body will contain the key value index that we were discussing a minute ago. Let Flux propagator take care of the Flux DAG, directed acyclic graph, action. This gives you linear time expression of data, of Mesos data being propagated and pruned in a declarative fashion with Material interacting with D3JS. React will give you the pipeline necessary for you to broadcast, emit, and process a batch in an asynchronous manner in an IPEM isolated server, which is the crux of Mesos. And this is the most efficient way to stream and project metrics of interest exposed inside a Mesos cluster.